I had a year of mechanical engineering under my belt in my undergrad. I've got this kind of techie mindset. I love gadgets and, watching how things are made. And all that I worked with, those kind of companies and just always had like that infinite curiosity. And so that's why that's why I started HUSHInbound, to say, like, I want to solve these frustrating things that I ran into as a sales rep, as a marketing rep, right? As a sales leader, as a marketing leader, and go help make people's lives easier and help people scale and grow their businesses, right?
Thank you for joining the Missing Half podcast, where we're discovering what's missing in manufacturing and B2B marketing. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Zach Hussion. Zach has a lot of experience, and we're really excited to dive into marketing automation, HubSpot, and a whole lot of other topics. Zach, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very excited to be on the show. Let's talk.
Yeah, Zach. So I think sometimes some of the best marketers are those who come from industry first, and then they go into the marketing agency, the marketing service provider space, because it allows us to have a really good perspective of the way things work, the way they're broken, where the problems were. And I know you and I both share those similar backgrounds where we came from industry and then we went into the marketing agency space. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about your background and how that led you to find some problems, solve those problems, and then launch your business?
Yeah, sure. It's coming up on 20 years now, almost.
Congratulations.
Working on, just different, different manufacturing, industrial companies for the most part, and different sales and marketing roles. So I was in the trenches as an individual contributor on a marketing team, as a sales rep, both leadership positions for both of those departments. And, I guess it's kind of like you're a 4-star general, or you're in it, like hard, right? Like you're in I'm trying to be, not swear too much here. You're in the trenches, I guess I'll just use that again.
Sure.
And, fast forward, 10 years, and it's kind of like when you want to, go get advice from somebody, it's like, well, you could be, the general who's never been in the trenches before. You could talk to the guy or girl, right, who's kind of like really had to grit and bear it and get through some of the tough times,
Sure.
make the mistakes, right? Like have those challenges where, things are going one direction one day, and then all of a sudden, something happens, right? COVID, supply chain crisis, new leadership direction, you picked it. And now it's like, oh, crap, right? We just launched our website and nothing worked. Or, oops, I just accidentally ran this workflow and just screwed up the whole data. It's like all these things that you've been through, dodging these, grenades that are getting launched at you. I think, having that industry experience, right? So it's like, not only have I dealt with these sales and marketing, like kind of low crap scenarios, but then specific to a manufacturing company or, right, something like that. So it's given me a lot of like unique perspective in how I approach things. I've never really had the agency life. I never worked for an agency. Well, all right, I lied. There was an agency, which will remain unnamed. I did have a short, maybe a couple months there. Things didn't work out so well. So, I really didn't understand like all these agency nuances, right? With
Sure.
billable hours and, how do you organize and track things and set, all the different types of, kind of touches that you need to have with your, with your accounts and, kind of how do you keep those projects moving from like how an agency would do it.
Sure.
So yeah, there's probably some agencies out there that have some better playbooks than I do when it comes to rolling that out. But, being able to pull from specific situations that I've lived through and then, take the things that I've learned there and then, push it into a new project, right? Or a similar challenge that someone else has had, I think is, gives me a bit of a leg up in that area. And so after doing it for a while, right, trying to figure out like, how do I, build a winning sales team or a winning process for that team, or how do I, really kick butt in marketing and answer those like, well, what's our ROI look like? And just trying out different tools and different CRMs, different, marketing, softwares, different sales enablement, just trying to pull all this data and stuff together and put together this solution that I really, I struggled for a long time to come up with like a way to do it that just was easy and made sense. It's like, why does this have to be so much work for me to get this answer? It's like, we can get it, but man, it takes a lot of work to get there. And then there's all this maintenance. It just wasn't a great experience. And then I found HubSpot. That was back in 2014. I was going through a project for a company I was working for. They were looking to select a new CRM. I think I spent 6 months researching CRMs and, marketing softwares, and it's this HubSpot thing. And just like immediately fell in love with it back then. And that was really more from like a marketing perspective, right? I mean, they had some CRM capabilities, which at that time I thought were still better than some of the alternatives, and certainly better than what they had at the time. And then I, did my thing there, went to another company, I think, got a little distracted as a sales rep in that role and kept on moving over to the CRM sucks. Like, why, how come I can't pull this report? And then I came up with some things and the team was like, wow, this is great. Like, I wish we had this information. And I, maybe I have something here. This is, I keep on drifting away from like sales and drifting kind of away from these marketing roles, and like always finding myself just like getting pulled in like a magnet to these other kind of, business problems that were, typically like software and process based, more operational things. And so started kind of focusing more on that and some of my, later roles, and started, implementing HubSpot for folks when I came in as a marketing and sales leader. Gotta have it. If you guys want me to, to answer these questions for you, then this is the way. Right. And that was kind of like almost non-negotiable, right? Like, we have to have this tool. Otherwise, like, I don't really know how to help you. Like, sure. I found that to be successful, and the universe sometimes just aligns in weird ways. And it was kind of just time for me to scratch that itch, which is always to just kind of be my own boss.
Sure.
And was very fortunate to take my last employer on as my, first customer.
Oh, nice.
And, right. And then they had a client that I had, built a relationship with a little bit. Right. And I was able to take them on as my second client. So, it doesn't happen usually that way for most folks, but that's what I'm saying. Like, the universe aligned, and I'm like, whoa, like, this is super uncomfortable and risky. And, but like, I have this kind of soft landing here that's going to at least keep you going on almost day one. I mean, I think it was probably about a month where I was like, I have no income, and I'm waiting for these contracts to be signed.
Sure.
I hope that all these people that I called, and asked if this was a good idea, that they said, yes, it was. And, they can't all be wrong. So just stick with it. And so that's, I guess, a very long-winded answer to a multi-layered question that you had, which is,
no, that's great.
Right? How did you get to where you are? And, what do what was that kind of like, that kind of journey along the way?
Well, no, and I think that's what's important about that, Zach, is the fact that you found a solution in an industry when you were working for someone, and then you found a way to leverage that solution and resell it to other people because they needed that. They had that same problem, and you had a solution that was working. And then my understanding is you've grown with that solution. So HubSpot today in 2024 is certainly a different animal than it was in 2013. We've all seen their development. They were basically a marketing automation platform with a very embryonic CRM back then, I guess I would say. And now we have Sales Hub and Service Hub and the inbound conference was just here recently where they announced a whole bunch of new stuff, which I haven't even had time to digest it all, and nobody has, but that's part of the game. But that tool is certainly something that we rely on. And full disclosure, neither Zach nor I get any are not being paid as influencers to promote HubSpot, right? This is just a tool we love.
You're not getting paid? I got like a $10,000 check in the mail. You got screwed over, man.
We'll talk.
Just kidding.
We'll talk after the podcast because I want a little bit of that, right? We need a little bit of a cut. But no, I mean, we love the tool. It's worked really well for us. I mean, certainly there are use cases for other tools. And we're going to kind of move off of that conversation around HubSpot to more of the generic marketing approach. But, I think one of the things that's valuable about HubSpot, or if you use other tools, is as marketers, we have to be preparing our clients for the shift in buyer behaviors because it's a totally different animal. So could you talk about maybe how, and you can plug HubSpot in the way you're using it because that's what you know and that's what you're really good at, but how we need to approach as manufacturing companies and B2B companies, how they need to think differently about approaching marketing because those buyer behaviors have dramatically changed. And I think the rate of change continues to accelerate every day.
Yeah, sure. And just to kind of take a quick step back, yeah, I mean, clearly very biased towards HubSpot. I've used, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, the big three. I've implemented them before on much smaller scales than I do things with HubSpot now. And that was a long, long time ago. But, to me, what's most important is, pick a CRM that fits your needs. Right?
Yes.
I'm always going to kind of lean that HubSpot direction just from experience. But I've seen, many companies that do it, they have things set up very well in other CRMs, right? And other automation platforms. Might take a little more work to get there, a little more maintenance to, keep them going. But like you can, a good strategy can still be executed on a wide variety of different technologies, right? And still kind of get you to that end result. I've also seen like really, awful setups of HubSpot.
Sure.
Right. So it's not, the tool makes a big difference, but really it's just like strategy, planning, execution, right? Tracking. Like if you put a lot of time into doing all that stuff the right way, you can do it on other systems. It's just, again, what's going to make your life the easiest.
Sure.
So that's just kind of going back on that. Then in terms of like, buyer behavior, right? Buyers have changed over the years, dramatically for sure. I mean, you think about back in the day, the traveling salesman, right? Would knock on your door and introduce you to a product that you never heard of that you didn't know that you needed. And
Sure.
That was a whole different, right? Kind of like creating that demand and right. And now it's like the complete opposite. Like people don't want to talk to a salesperson until very, very late in the buyer's journey. So, I'm not saying that salespeople aren't needed. They're just not needed as much, right? And they're needed in different ways, I think now.
Sure.
Which honestly, as a living in the sales rep seat, who wants to have 500 conversations, about, early stage questions when that they're just kind of kicking the tire a little bit and they're not going to buy anything for 6 months or a year, a couple, whatever that may be. I'd rather have people get the information themselves, have marketing and sales collaborate to really make sure that they're providing that helpful educational information and answering all those questions to allow people to kind of move through that self-serve journey that they want to. But yeah, it's very different. So we have to adapt to the way that we're selling to people, right? And especially if you look at the youngest generation that's coming to the workforce, by far, they do not want to deal with other people,
Yes.
I use the car analogy all the time. You're going to go buy a car. You don't just roll up to 10 dealerships and say, what car should I buy? You've probably spent, a ton of time researching, consumer reports and reading, other, for other, users and just like doing all this research until you say, all right, I've narrowed it down to a Toyota 4Runner TRD off-road. And I want it, in black with, tan leather, all right, now there's like 3 dealerships that might have it like, right. I'm going to go, talk to somebody now. Now I need somebody to help me because I can't just, well, I guess I kind of can at this point. You can click and buy a car online and have it dropped off at your house, right? Like Carvana or whatever, no affiliation, but that's why those companies, they're working. People are saying, great, I don't have to talk to anybody. So, how do you handle that? Like, what do you do? Right. So I think it's like putting less emphasis on, like just hiring these big, massive sales teams to go out there and just pound the pavement and, kind of do more traditional salesy things. Cause again, it's inbound. People again, want to just come to you when they're ready and put a lot more emphasis on inbound marketing and content generation. And I mean, I can talk for a long time about, building up that kind of contact or content database and and building up data and building up all these things that you can now leverage and do things with to use AI, as your prospecting agent, right? As your customer service rep, right? And so focus more on the strategy, focus more on the content, and then let the self-serve stuff just kind of be automated and right. And then when it comes time to, say, all right, we've narrowed it down to 3 different potential vendors. That's when you want to hit it hard and say, great, now I want to make sure you're talking to me because I'm going to help push this across the finish line. I'm going to make sure that I'm there to be helpful and answer any questions that you have, address any concerns that you might have, overcome objections to our solution. And don't forget, build a relationship too. Right? Have that human to human contact because people still buy from people, right?
What do you think is the biggest challenge we're facing when you look at some of the late adopters, right? You're looking at companies who are not Fortune 500, but these mid-market companies, maybe they're, a couple people in the marketing department, still very sales-led. Why are they so hesitant to change? Or what do you think is the big issue that people like you and I are trying to overcome to move them from same old to having great tools, having great content, and allowing people to self-service on that buyer's journey?
It's kind of like things have been good for a while, right? Why think about something different? It's it's, business has been steadily kind of growing. We have our ups and downs and we kind of point to things, why that happened. Maybe it was the economy. Maybe we, right. A lot of times it's external factors, but, you say, well, when customers are doing well, we're doing well. When customers are doing bad, we're doing bad. So it's kind of well, as long as that cycle is just kind of we're all in it together, then, and over the years, we're kind of doing this slow but steady kind of thing. It's if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Sure.
And since things have never, I haven't had that pain, I've had plenty of other pains, right? There's probably been operational pains, quality pains, product throughput, all this other kind of more sales, engineering, operations, that kind of manufacturing woes. That's where all the attention's going into that. Meanwhile, right, business is just kind of fine and dandy. And then boom, this transformation happens, and it happens, relatively quick when you look at the longer timeline and of how things have evolved over the past 50 years.
Sure.
Boom, all of a sudden, the internet hasn't been around even for that long, right? When you put things into perspective, for some people that would be listening, they're well, it's been around since I've been born, right? But I remember playing with sticks in the dirt still, So, it's kind of people were asleep at the wheel.
Sure.
They were complacent, they had no need to change. And now all of a sudden, things happen really quick. And maybe they're still riding that train where it's hey, customers are doing well, we're doing well. But it's, inevitably something's going to hit the fan and it may not be that way. And then you're going to start looking okay, well, how do I solve that? And then somebody is going to say, well, there's been this whole other way that, doing, going to market, if you look at it, these software companies and these finance companies and health, tech companies, right? They're 10 years ahead of you, manufacturing companies. And now they're saying, okay, great. Well, we want to do that marketing thing, and you're great, give me 5% of your, of your revenue. And you're what? What do
Yeah.
you mean I got to give you, hundreds of thousands of dollars? I'm like, well,
To
actually,
catch
you should
up.
probably give me, more because you got to catch up.
Yep.
But, and then it's kind of like, wow, I'm not going to give you that money. It's because, well, now we have to go back and educate you about, well, this is what inbound marketing is. This is how the buyer's journey has changed over the years. This is why it's important. And you have to sell them on like, for some of us, we're just like, this is just basic. Like, this is everyday marketing, right?
Yes.
And so that's, the challenge is that you have to get to the right people who are writing the checks to make these decisions and get them to give you time to say, hey, yeah, I'm willing to learn all about marketing, and why the way things are different, right? Or, but it has to come from somebody who's high up. It's really hard when you have like that marketing coordinator who was like all pumped about, HubSpot because they're just like, this is the best thing, right? Or Salesforce, whatever, but I'm pumped about this tool or this philosophy of how to do something. Let's do it. And they maybe never sold something to a C-level. Like they don't. It's like so it never goes anywhere.
What do you think the biggest challenge is for a marketing manager when they're trying to sell these new ideas up to the C-suite? Is it inexperience, not having experience selling the C-suite, which has its own set of challenges and skills required? Is it the fact that they don't tie it into strategy, they just get too focused on the features and benefits? Or is there something else that you kind of have observed that is a challenge for the marketing manager?
I think that it's kind of show me the ROI, or what's my anticipated ROI of this?
Sure.
Right. What's my return going to be? If I'm going to give you, X dollars per month for, software licensing for the tools that you need, if I'm going to, maybe I'll let you hire another person because, if you're going to be doing all these things, it's kind of hard for this one person marketing team to do them all at that level.
Sure.
Or I got to give you money to give to an agency to outsource some stuff. And so it's kind of like, okay, what's my return on all that? And it's kind of like, okay, well, give me 2 or 3 years worth of data, and then I can kind of give you some ideas. Like, but you're going from nothing to like, what's my return going to be on this in 3? It's like, well, you have no data to tell me that you've been running a ad campaign and you pump this much into it, you get this much out of it, or like we know that if we write this much content, that we get this many eyeballs, and that turns into this many form submissions, that turns into this many opportunity. Like you have no data for me to make any even guesses off of. So I can use some industry kind of numbers, some best practice kind of things, but it's like I have to I can't just give you a number and you say, oh, that makes sense. Like, let's go.
Sure.
There's a huge long story to these things, and every situation is going to be different too, right? You might have a ton of content, right? It's just you have no conversion paths and nothing set up. So it's great. We can take all this great content and do things the right way with it. Or you could have a great website, but no content, So it's like,
I think a lot of clients really struggle because they may do one thing really well. Like you just said, they may have a great website. They might have great social media, but 2 things. One, they don't have someone in-house who can bridge the gap between the C-suite and the marketing function from a strategy standpoint.
That's the main challenge. Yeah, I think.
Right. And help bridge that gap. Because I think, okay, let's say a marketing manager goes to C-suite and says, hey, I want this new tool, or I want to do video, or I want to do more social media, or whatever it is. That just sounds like a thing that costs money, that's a lot of work, that the C-suite really, let's be honest, doesn't understand. I mean, they're very intelligent people, and in their own right and in their space, they're amazing. But in this space, it's like, they have no clue. And so then that strategy bridge becomes a huge gap. And then a lot of times that marketing managers, I think what they do is then they lean on the technical part of it, and they get down into the weeds.
Yeah. And like they lose them right away.
They're like, what time is my tea time?
They're falling asleep. It's like, meeting's over. Like, you lost me. If you go into a CEO's office and say, hey, if you invest in this thing, doesn't even matter what it is, and it costs you, $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 a year, but I could turn that investment into, an additional $5-10 million of new business every year. Would you do it? And they'd say, oh yeah, great. Yeah, right. Well, no. but they have to have people that they trust and listen to just say like, I can do this. Like, you give me the funds, I can do this. Right.
Yes.
And it's not going to, it's not going to take a week. It's going to take us, 12, 24 months, if you're building something from scratch.
Yes.
But if you buy into that, then like we can do it. But, unless that C-level like really trusts this person because they have a winning track record, it's like go to like a new CEO who just joined the company 6 months ago that you have no relationship with and ask that question. You're going to get a very different answer.
So Zach, changing gears a little bit, whenever we go from a general marketing perspective and some of the challenges our clients may be facing, the industry's facing, down into your area of expertise, which is HubSpot implementations and optimizations for your clients. Whenever you think about those projects and those engagements, what do you think are some, like maybe some guidelines or some key ideas or concepts you would like to present to a marketing manager who's thinking about that as kind of some first steps or some roadmaps, and not to get down into the 100-step framework, but just 50,000 foot, I'm thinking about proposing this for my Q4 budgets for 2024, and I need to take my company from Stone Age to implementation. What are some thoughts you would offer from your expertise?
Understand how systems are used and connected in your organization. Just because you're looking at things through a marketing lens, everybody's a marketer, everyone's a salesperson, everyone's a customer success manager. Right. And then whatever you do, there could be a domino effect for like, oh, I just want to, rip this thing out and do it this way. Well, right. That, you're going to break these other things. So it's like, understand the lay of the land and how, what systems do you have? So kind of do your own kind of like tech stack audit. And then, you have to build, like, do the foundational stuff needs to be in place before you just start buying shiny toys.
Sure.
Right. So, make sure that you have a documented, ideal customer profile. Make sure that you've done, buyer personas. Start putting together, do your keyword research. Make sure that, you really understand your buyer and the buyer's journey. Have a plan for like what, once you have this tool, how, what are you going to execute with it? How do I get rid of other tools by getting this tool? Like, I don't want to add just another tool to the tech stack. Like this, hopefully this tool gets rid of something else, right? Or
sure,
if it doesn't, kind of easily integrate into these other things, right? And so it's like, you've done foundation, you've done all this foundational work. You have a pretty good strategy in hand. And then, now it's like, okay, if we are able to execute this strategy, then our hypothesis is that we're going to be able to accomplish like this.
Sure.
Right. So it's like, make sure that all makes sense. And then like the tool selection is it's just like, you just got to pick, hey, I'm driving across the country. I've already mapped out like all the, gas stations and, restaurants and, the largest ball of twine in Minnesota or something, right? That we're going to stop and see. I think that's actually a Weird Al Yankovic song, to be honest with you. That little line that just popped in my head. But give it a listen. It's a good one. So it's like you have that all planned out, and then it's like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter if I drive a Ford or a Chevy, to get there. But like if I just hit the road in any vehicle with no plan, it's like I'm bound to run into some kind of like, sleeping on the side of the highway situations. So it's like you have it all like have a good plan in place. And then it, in terms of like, okay, once we get approval for the plan and the tools that we need and all, like, it's like, great. Like I signed my contracts and I like day one, I have access to the tools.
Sure. Now
right?
what?
Now what? So depending on what it is, it's like, what's your bandwidth and what's your appetite for learning? Like if you have zero bandwidth and you don't really have any interest in learning how to use a new platform, well, find a partner. right? Outsource, have somebody basically take your vision and go do it, right? It's like, we help, we do those things, right? You do those things. Is your appetite, well, I really want to become a master at this tool. Like I want to become, intimately knowledgeable, and, my style is I don't want to have to really, rely on an outsourced provider for this. I want to build my own, in-house kind of knowledge. Great. I hope you have a lot of time, because you're going to need to learn a lot, right? So, and that's cool. And I encourage people to do that, because I think you can that's really like when you have like an in-house team that gets really intimately involved with these tools, like that's where the cool stuff really happens. Like,
Sure.
Because they have the time to kind of really go play and figure out these, these really, challenging, things in their business they have to go solve for, right? Or just creative ways of approaching things. But, if you're going to say, I'm going to be that person, then it's like, okay, well, start consuming, a lot of content, start playing, before you just say like, great, like, let's just start building stuff, like start learning about oh, I do this happens. And start mock things up, like start building this thing out, and then give yourself like a decent runway to kind of, learn and play and roll it out over time. Not everybody has that luxury. Some people are like, well, my license ends, for this one system here, I got 9 months to,
Sure.
to go, probably hire a partner or something for that. But just, dedicate, either one direction, like I want to learn or I want to outsource, and then do all, again, foundational stuff. Make sure you go through and configure all your settings and, and do all try to use everything that platform natively has to offer as much as possible before you start looking for other solutions, other things to plug in, custom this, custom that. Go build, start building all that stuff out, and leverage that functionality. I think that's kind of that walk, crawl, run. Don't give yourself some time. Don't just jump into it, without a plan. Give your time to you're going to fail a couple times probably at some things. Document,
yes.
Document. That's the big, it's like, if you do it from day one, it's a lot easier than saying, all right, well, let's go back and look at the last 2 years of stuff we did and put it into this giant, working, document.
One of the things we've found with our clients is when they have someone who's focused on their business and the marketing function and allows us to be that hybrid assistance on the technical side and on kind of the activation and distribution, there is enough. Once you get the data working, and you mentioned this, once you get the data working and everybody's involved with it, there are so many challenges and opportunities that arise that usually there's enough space just for that internal marketing person at that company to just focus on the company side and solving those issues, and then leaving us to do our stuff in the marketing automation, CRM, content marketing, and those type of spaces. Now, if you have a company you're working with that has 5 to 7 or more on their team, they can take on more of that. But if they have 1 to 3 people, and let's be honest, we know they're wearing, it's like they're at one of those lids stores. They're wearing a million hats, and they keep. There's no way that that one person can activate an inbound marketing strategy, a content marketing strategy, and do HubSpot and while taking care of all the other things that happen every day as that internal marketing person. And we've found that hybrid approach to be more effective. But like you said, it's whenever you start to build that data that you can make something happen, because that's when the magic comes together. So I completely agree with that. When you look at the what we're trying to replace, right? What we're trying to offset in companies is the lack of salespeople and or that early stage of the sales cycle, because people want to self-service. They want to find the information where they want it, when they want it, how they want it. They don't want to talk to someone at the trade show who's going to lure them in and say, hey, have you ever thought about this? They're going to the trade show to go to a booth of a company they research, a product they know, and build a relationship. Or they're going to go online, ingest all this information, and then when there's all types of figures, 60, 70, 80% down the buyer's journey, they're going to contact the company and start that sales conversation. Why do you think companies are struggling with that transition? Is it because they don't know how to do it? They don't believe in it? Or what do you see as when you talk to these clients, why they're struggling with that transition?
I think, yeah, they a lot of them, it's like experience. They don't have the experience. They don't have the know-how. So not everybody has like a guru that they've hired, right, to help kind of guide them on like, hey, this is the way, I worked at this other company for 5 years and we did this really awesome job doing this thing, right? And I'm going to bring that kind of idea to you. Not everybody has it. Some people have had a marketing person that have been the same marketing person for 20 years, right? Or the same sales director for 30 years. And, there's nothing wrong with that. It just, I think there's pros and cons.
Sure.
They know your business and your industry very, very well, but they don't know about anything else outside of that bubble really, very intimately, right? And it's like, some people may say, well, I look at a guy or girl, like they've had, a dozen jobs in the past 20 years, and that's a negative because they got commitment issues, Well, I look at it and say, well, I've seen a lot of different ways that people have tried to make things work, and I've seen things that work really well and things that don't work really well, and, I don't know how else you get that experience, right? You can read a whole bunch of case studies, I guess, but even that's not going to give you right what you need. So I think the struggle is like, you don't have the experience, you don't have the people. I think a lot of it comes down to education. You don't know what you don't know.
When you think about the risk that is out there today for companies who are late adopters, who haven't done anything, that are not investing in their marketing, how much more risky is it today? And is that risk accelerating? The people who aren't embracing, and I look at this with AI, AI search. If you don't have your information online, the buyers of today and tomorrow are going to go to ChatGPT or whichever one it is and type in, I want to buy this and compare this and that. And if you're not online with that information, you're not in the conversation. So do you see that risk becoming greater, and the companies who don't invest and participate, they're just going to be on the outside looking in even more so every day?
Yeah, I think it's like companies who have dragged their feet when it comes to investing in technology and software and processes and data, right? Data. If you don't even have good data today, then how do you expect to leverage that data for something that is as complex as weaving AI into your business?
Sure.
Right. So, that's already a big risk that you're exposed, because, it takes time to build these things. It's not like you can just toggle the AI button on and go, like, I wish it was that easy. And there is a AI button you can toggle on, but it's like, it doesn't do anything unless you've done all this, foundational work, right?
Sure.
And so it's like, okay, like if you decide today that AI is important and you don't have great data and you don't have good systems and like you're not set up with that right foundation. All right, well, great. Like maybe in 12, 24 months, right, you're starting to do more stuff. And then, you look at Moore's Law, right? The computing speed doubling every 18 months.
Sure.
Well, AI in the picture now, it's every 6 months. So it's like, okay, it's going to take me 2 years just to catch up to where people are today. Meanwhile, it's going to, things are going to, change by 4x by the time I get to that finish line. So it's like, it's almost like, am I ever going to catch up?
Sure.
And so I think that the companies that will survive that wake up call are the ones who are serious about it and really put the effort into catching up. And it's going to be a bit of a journey. And then the ones who are just kind of like, this AI thing is hyped up, and I like my filing cabinet over here, and like I still, we still do our, our sales, reviews with a pen and paper in an office here with no data to support it. Just kind of like, well, how do you think this month's going to close up? Right. It's like,
sure. Touchy feely, right? How does it feel today? One of the things I think though, that's encouraging or should encourage anyone who's listening, if you have a company and you are way behind, if you're a late adopter, the speed at which you can catch up it's never been more available, because if you partner with a good agency or good outsourced resources plus an in-source team, it has never been more efficient to get caught up rapidly, right? And you can go across the spectrum, whether it's content, whether it's video, whether it's your social media, whether it's implementing these tools. I mean, the things that would have taken weeks and months to implement with HubSpot back in 2013, there are some of those things we can do very, very quickly if we have good participation and the right team member. I mean, I'm generalizing a lot, right?
Yeah, it's like the yes, but. Yeah, you can do it, but, right? It's like you need to put the effort into it. You can't just say, hey, we're going to meet for an hour a week.
Yeah.
And, ramp this thing up in 90 days. That's very complex and has a lot of moving pieces. It's like, no, you need to pump out like more time. And that's where I see things like they want to change fast and they bought into it.
Yes.
But they can't dedicate the time or it's like they don't have the right, like, oh, we got this one marketing person, right, who is running the initiative, and they already don't have any time. So, even like I can meet with you for an hour a week, but oh yeah, by the way, you have another like 3 to 5 hours a week, maybe 10 hours a week collectively between your team of things to do before our call next week, right? If you want to go do this, right?
Yeah. And if those don't get done, it snowballs, right? It just gets out of control quickly. But I think there's an opportunity for companies to spend a lot less than they would have even 3 to 5 years ago. So if let's say we had a model where there's a company that's doing $100 million a year in manufacturing, they're a late adopter, and they look at someone who's that market leader in marketing, has been investing for 7 years and has a great program. 3 years ago, if you'd have said to me, well, how much is it going to cost and how long is it going to take? I would have said, it might take $1 million in 3 to 5 years. I think now you might be able to do it for $350,000 in 24 to 36 months, right? Just because I think our space is that much more efficient and better. And also we're able to deliver more proven tools. Like, you're not going to go out and you don't have to do what you did early in your career and investigate 10 or 12 different CRMs that all were on the cutting edge and brand new and nobody knew which horse to bet on. Okay, there's 2 or 3 you should look at and you can really rapidly figure out which one's right for you, right? So I think the efficiencies there, if the C-suite owners, whoever, are willing to write the check and then they're willing to allocate the resources of people, it has never been more achievable than it is today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if you just gave me like a whole bunch of caffeine and no distractions and you were to say, hey, Zach, like take this company that was kind of like living in the Stone Age and like set them up with an intelligent CRM, migrate some data over, which is probably going to be dirty, but like I won't spend a lot of time cleaning because I don't have, I only have a couple of days to do this.
Sure.
Get their CRM set up, give them some, connect their social accounts, get them, leveraging email marketing, get them like spin up all these, that whole marketing machine, right? And basic functionality, right? And then, right.
Yes.
We can do some deal tracking, right? And then connect sales and marketing. So you can kind of do some attribution and some ROI tracking. And then have like a little bit of you can spin that up in like a week.
Sure.
Right? I'm talking like no distractions. I'm working, 12-hour day. It's like, and it's just like, but if you wanted to get it done quick, you could throw time, some time, not time, right? But you throw some hours at it in a short amount of time and, and get it done. It's just, where things get hung up is, again, people don't have the time to commit to it. Maybe just from a budget perspective, like we want to do this, but like we don't want to spend this type of money maybe to do it all at once. Let's take a phased approach over time. There's this, a lot of things can make these things a little more difficult than they have to be, but that's reality, right? It's like,
that's just what it is.
It just is what it is. Like when I first started out, it was like I just was more of an idealist, right? Oh, I shouldn't, just say yes, just do it. There's a lot more layers of moving pieces to get things moving along.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but if you cut the red tape, that you could just
you can move.
You can move. It's like the tools are just very user friendly, and the barriers to getting them getting things done are low.
So Zach, the other thing I think we have to make sure we communicate accurately with the right expectation is, you said in a couple weeks, lots of coffee, no sleep, you could implement that kind of skeleton system to get them going. I want to make sure that we don't create the expectation with a C-suite or an executive person to think that their internal marketing person could also do that.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, you have years and years of experience. You've been doing HubSpot specifically for 11 years. So you forgot more during this conversation than someone could learn in like that 3-week binge period, right? So you can achieve speed, but it requires budget, right? Because like to get
budget and experience, like you need a partner who's like, okay, like I know that on day one, we're going to go through this, and then I'm going to collect this type of information. I got a bunch of questions, and we're going to, kind of map things out that need to be done. And I know that, right, we got to do this, and we'll just go do it, right? Because we already created a recipe for success, based on like what your unique kind of, challenges and goals are. Oh, like it's revenue based. Okay, we'll focus on these things. Like, oh, it's just leads, and processing those. All right, we can focus on it. And you can't solve it all at once either, right? So you got to pick those 3 or 5 things that you can really move the needle on. But yeah, it's like I've spent, at this point now, right, thousands of hours learning and doing, and sometimes learning the hard way, right? Yep. Having, like, oh crap, now I got to fix that, right? Like,
sure,
don't want to have to go through that again. So make sure that you're more careful next time. Or like, oh, like I have a client who's got this one challenge, and you're sitting there and you're just trying to figure out this workflow, and it's like a couple hours, and you're just getting really, it's like, why won't you work? And then all of a sudden you hit that like eureka moment. You're like, yes, I solved the problem. Well, next time you do it now, it's like, okay, great. I'm not, that'll take me a fraction of the time. You do that for long enough, and that's how we can help you, right? Spin things up quickly and help you make these business decisions that we know are going to help you out. And, I wish I could just tell more people, just shut up and listen to me, right? Just like, and I actually have one client who I did say that to, and he did listen. We had a good enough relationship to say that. It was a great moment. But and that's just kind of my style, I guess. But it's like, just listen to people who've been doing it and done it and made the, gone through the headaches. It's like, we're telling you to do it this way for a reason.
Yes.
Not because it makes us a bunch more money. It's because honestly, like it probably might make us a little less money, but the headaches aren't going to be there for us or for you. And I don't want any more headaches. And neither do you.
We want it smooth. We want smooth implementation and outputs.
Yeah. Well, and I want it to work,
Zach, whenever you, let's just talk about when it works for a minute. Whenever you get an implementation with a client that has matured, right? We're in that 12 to 18 month range. We've built the foundation properly. We implemented the tools. Maybe paint a little bit of a picture of what that magic can look like once you start to get that together and you start to see the things interacting properly.
It's like someone starts out on day one or very early on, and they're excited and they have these ideas. They're like, I want to do this email, nurture campaign. I'm like, okay, great. What do you have for assets that we can include to make it, helpful and educational? Right. Yeah. Like I had nothing, right? Like I got this piece of sales collateral from, updated 3 years ago. So, okay, great. Like go spend a bunch of time now building the assets. Right. And it's like, I know you're excited, but you got to kind of go do like the kind of like grunt work of pulling all this stuff together. And it's not really grunt work. It's actually like, if you do it the right way, you can, have fun with creating the content. Versus, hey, we've already built the foundation for you, and you say, hey, I came up with this cool idea last night while I was cooking dinner, and like I thought like this is how we could go to market and do this thing. Great, let's do it. And like you can do it by the end of the day. Because like we already have all the assets, we just got to pick which ones we want to use, right? And like we already have the foundation built, so it's like great, we'll just spin up a form and a landing page and an email, and like we already have our list put together, so we'll pick this list, I'll suppress this list and schedule for tomorrow, and off we go. It's like I built a landing page, I built my email nurture campaign, I put like all this in, I've done it in like an hour, and we can now go do it. that's fun, right? Now you can actually start like leveraging the machine to, right? It's like I spent the last 2 years building my race car. I get to drive it now.
Well, I like that. Because I couldn't agree more that whenever we get to that moment where we have the foundation set and we have the tools working, the ability to scale things and test them and like have this hypothesis of, okay, here's this buyer persona in this niche, and we feel that messaging to them could work well. Well, instead of spending $1 million in 2 years building it, let's test it. Let's get some emails out there. Let's get some social posts. Let's get some interaction. That can happen so rapidly that then it becomes more of a strategic play where you have to prioritize what you're going to test and not just throw everything against the wall. But that's more fun than being stuck in the weeds where you have like everything is drudgery because you start from scratch with everything, right? Mm-hmm. They have a target market and a headline. Okay, great. Yeah. That's like 2 of 100 things we need to have a full funnel campaign, top, middle, bottom funnel, and landing pages and nurture sequences and workflows and the whole 9 yards. But no, I agree that can be magic. And that can then, the other side of that is then the data starts coming back, real data, or more real data, not like what is real data, but like better data that's more statistically significant that can lead us towards some conclusions. That's when it gets more fun and where you can kind of really be out there on that developmental edge, right out there on the horizon and seeing things come home, whether that's in pipeline or in whatever the activation or conversion objective is for those campaigns. So
what's more fun, like being Dale Earnhardt, like just zipping around the track, right? Or being like the other guy, like in the garage, still wrenching away, like being like, I want to be out there doing that, but I got to finish building this car first. Of course, everyone wants to do more, the fun stuff. And I remember having, conversations early on in some campaigns, and talking to client, just it's going to be so cool once we like actually have some more time,
Sure.
I can't wait for that, like that moment when we're like all this upfront work that we're putting in finally starts like, doing what we, intended it to do 12 months later. And, I remember saying it. I know the feeling of being like, oh, I just can't wait. I can't wait. Then all of a sudden it happens.
Sure.
Right. And you're like, leads are flowing through, or we just won that one big deal that marketing helps, nurture and bring in, or like, it's like whenever we've been working on and putting all this effort into, all of a sudden you're like, I just sat in my race car for the first time, and then like we came in, maybe we came in third place at the Daytona 500 for the first time around, but man, we have a shot at first place now, like next year.
That's right. We're in the game. We're actually participating. We're actually competing. No, I think that's a great analogy and framing of that whole idea. Well, Zach, this has been an absolute pleasure. You have a specific niche expertise, right, in and around this space. I know you do a great job with implementation. So we also want to give you a moment to shamelessly plug your business. We always do that. So please take advantage of this opportunity. If there's any of our viewers who really need that expertise, certainly want to recommend Zach for that. He comes very highly regarded in the industry. So Zach, please pitch your business.
Don't call me. I don't want any more work right now. I'm enjoying my work-life balance and my upcoming vacation. I'll be gone for a couple of weeks. So, don't call me. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll publish this after you get back. So
yeah, right. But there you go. And that'd give me a couple of weeks to catch up, and then call me. Now, so I figured that, hey, I had a year of mechanical engineering under my belt in my undergrad. I've got this kind of techie, mindset. I love gadgets and, watching how things are made and all that. I worked with, those kind of companies, and I've always had like that infinite curiosity. And so that's why that's why I started HUSHInbound, to say like, I want to solve these frustrating things that I ran into as a sales rep, as a marketing rep, right? As a sales leader, as a marketing leader, and, go help make people's lives easier and help people scale and grow their businesses, right? It's like if you can scale and grow the business, then you can feed that back in, to make people's lives, even better, and make your customers' lives better, hopefully, right? That's your mentality. I guess like working for other companies, the sense of purpose wasn't as strong, or maybe it was just missing a lot of times, right?
Sure.
And so it's like you kind of, you go in, you do your thing, you go home, rinse and repeat, and it's kind of like that. I'm trying to help people, but like they're not letting me help people. It's like now I get to come into work every day and just say like, hey, I got a smile on my face, and like how can we help? What's grinding your gears? What's keeping you up at night? What's frustrating you? What's causing friction? Let's focus on those things. And oh, by the way, right, we want to try to make you some more money too.
Sure.
So that's kind of how I approach everything. And it just happens to be for like manufacturing kind of engineering companies. So I think need the most amount of help because they're 10 years behind everybody else. So I also selfishly just see there's a big need there. And I've talked about it with other partners who were kind of in the similar space. And it's like, I can't take credit for this specifically, but I will say that I was thinking this before I heard the other person say it. So it's like, I just never published it. So they're going to get all the credit for it anyways. But Chris, this one's for you. It's like, right, how do we create like an Amazon buying experience, like in the B2B world, right? Like the B2C has it, right? Why
Sure.
just make it easy? I don't want to get frustrated. Just like make the user experience easy, and make the actual person who's working at the company, make their employee experience easy. And so if I can help people do that stuff, that's what I focus in on doing. And I like to do it, hands-on as much as possible.
Sure.
And really like kind of be an extension of the team, whether it's kind of like a fractional CMO role, or just like helping you to, build the team out, or just like train your existing team, or just get you set up with some outside sources. So really just like helping you like consolidate your tech stack, focus on like what's working and what's not working from a marketing perspective, make sure that my salespeople are focusing on the right type of activities and prioritizing like leads and deals. And I want transparency into my pipeline, and right. How do we like align these teams for success? I mean, there's so many different little things that I can get my hands in on. But I really just I love the rev ops. I love the let's get your CRM like working for you versus you working for your CRM, and then all the things that kind of connect into your CRM. And then I also help with like inbound marketing strategy, and I'm not going to go do the work for you. And I'm not a content writer. I'm not going to go put your Google Ads campaign together. I know people, right? I have partners who can help with that kind of stuff. But, if you don't have a buyer persona as like laid out, and you don't know what your ICP is, and you haven't really documented that, and you want to go through that whole like inbound marketing, like journey.
Sure.
Right. Like, well, I've got a lot of workshops we can go through to get you there. So then you can, again, like, let's build that foundation so that you can, I can watch you zipping around the racetrack, like, waving your flag out the window and a big smile on your face. It's just like, so that's kind of like what I offer, right? It's not, there's not a machine where it's like, let's get them in and get them out, get them onboarded. It's like, right. I don't really have like the need or the want to like kind of have like a big agency life, at this point. I really like being intimate with a handful of clients, and, really helping them along the way for a couple of years. And then also like there are going to be other people who just say, hey, like I need HubSpot, and I don't need a partner because I want to go learn.
Sure.
Right. Like I want to go down that journey of like I did, right? Nobody taught me HubSpot. I had to do a lot of learning, a lot of reading and stuff. So there are plenty of people like that too, where it's like, I would love to talk to you about HubSpot, help you sell it to your C-suite.
Sure.
And then once we get everybody to buy into everything, and, you sign your agreement, it's like, great, if you need help, call me.
Sure. No, I think there's a definite need for that in the market, because in and of itself, marketing automation, CRM, the hubs, and what those tools can do, the market needs more assistance in streamlining that and making it move faster, because everybody needs some level of it to scale. You cannot scale I think HubSpot's thing is like it's crafted, not cobbled.
Yep.
If you really want to hurt yourself as a company, try and cobble together a tech stack, and then spend all your time replicating the time, energy, and money that companies like HubSpot and these others who have spent hundreds of millions of dollars to take that problem out of the equation. If you want to plow that ground again, I mean,
have at it.
Good luck. Because
good luck to you.
That's all you're going to spend your time doing. And why solve problems that are 10 years old and have been solved, right? Let's solve the problems of today. And like we talked about before, let's let your internal marketing team focus on solving your company's marketing problem, not a tech stack problem or a process problem that maybe HubSpot, a tool, has figured out, or a problem that your agency or my agency has already figured out and can accelerate rapidly. That's where we can really get towards that magic moment where there's things happening. We're moving forward quickly. We're developing repeatable, scalable models. We're working together, and we're developing and achieving outsized results for the client. That's where it all comes together. And I think that's what you and I try and work towards every day for our clients and do in our space.
Yeah, I mean, like what we're doing, it's not cutting edge, right? Like,
no,
we're not reinventing the wheel, right? I mean, some of the stuff is cutting edge, right? But like, take what a successful business has done, right, and just do it over here.
Yes.
And then so it's like follow the tried and true, best practices. Like, listen to the people who have the experience, and right, they've already, right, like we've already kind of put in the work and kind of earned it, right?
Yes.
Like listen to us. We're trying, we're here to try to help. And be open, right? Be open to trying out some new things. And then, let the cutting edge stuff be, truly spend on cutting edge stuff. Like right now, if you have a good, kind of marketing strategy set up, and you're using, the right tools, and like, man, how cool is it to be able to have all that set up and then say, I get to spend part of my day like playing with like AI and how we're going to leverage that for our company.
Yes.
Versus we got all this catch up to do still, right? So I mean, there's hope for everybody, right? Like, doesn't matter what stage you're in, just start doing something, and make a decision, and know that they're not all going to be the right ones, and you're gonna probably waste a little bit of money here and there to learn what works well, but just have faith in the process, and it doesn't happen overnight, right?
Absolutely. Well, Zach, this has been a great conversation. I know I've learned a lot in what's missing in some of these approaches with HubSpot integrations and just that foundational approach. Really appreciate you coming on today. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining the Missing Half podcast, where we're discovering what's missing in manufacturing and B2B marketing. Please like, subscribe, share, and join the conversation. Have a great day.